All right, my name is Rich Schmidt. We're here with Amanda Wittstrom Higgins at the Nicholson Library at Linfield University. It's March 1st, 2023. Amanda, thank you so much for joining us today. The first question to get you started is why wine?
Well, wine is a beautiful intersect between agriculture, farming, community, and food, and it has the power to transcend people into different places, different periods of time, and also through cultures. I mean, some of my favorite experiences in wine is being able to travel the world and learn about extensive history or new regions. I feel blessed to have been able to spend the last couple of days in the Oregon wine country, which has been really an amazing experience.
So let's talk about your life before wine a little bit. Tell us about where you were born and raised and sort of life before wine.
Sure. So I'm a fourth generation agriculturalist from the Paso Robles region of California. That's halfway between Los Angeles and San Francisco. Similar to the Oregon, wine growing region, it's a rural community. The predominant farming and industries, there's really cattle and alfalfa, wheat, hay, walnuts, and then there was a neighboring, a few other industries that were around. But mainly this region where I grew up was based around agriculture, and it was a working class community. And the AVA was created in 1983, just a year after I was born. And what had transpired since I grew up was this passion and research and some of the greatest minds from the wine community have found Paso Robles as being a really special region for a number of reasons, aside from proximity to the ocean, soil, topography, diurnal temperature swings. And so after graduating from college in the mid-2000s, I knew that I wanted to dedicate my life to agriculture and telling the story of farmers and people in this industry, and really creating a bridge between generations and also communities, because I think that growing up in agriculture is very special. And being from a rural community, there's a smaller and smaller amount of people in the United States that are from rural communities. There's the highest density in the urban environments. And so I realized that, my friends who came from living in town or the city couldn't wait to ride horses. They couldn't wait to, play in the tree fort. They couldn't wait to be outside and riding ATVs and really being part of agriculture, and whether that was picking eggs from chickens or eating fresh fruit from trees. And I just know that there's this love and passion for farming when people have the opportunity to be exposed to it. And so my draw to the wine industry is really bridging that gap and inviting people from other communities and other walks of life to be part of agriculture, that we can all sit at the same table together. And we really are so much more alike as humans, as individuals, as Americans, than sometimes I think we believe. And so wine really brings all of us together, and that's what I love.
You mentioned going to school. Tell me about college and what you studied, and then after school, kind of where you thought you were headed.
So like many young people, when you grow up in a certain industry or in agriculture, I thought I wanted to do something different. But what I studied and what I've always had a huge love and passion for is people. I was a social science major, which is sociology, geography, and anthropology. And the study of people has, I think, really set me apart in my professional career, my love for people, because bringing communities together and understanding that we are different, but we are very much the same, has been really important. So I grew up in agriculture, studied something else. My senior project was on job satisfaction in the workplace, and so creating teams and getting the most out of the people that you work with was, looking back almost 20 years later, is something that I've always loved to do, because that's really, I think, in the business environment or in society, is like how can you get the most out of the people around you, so that, you're showcasing their talents, whether their talents are, whether you're dealing with a vineyard, whether you're dealing with an individual, whether you're dealing with, something special in a particular community. How can you showcase those talents that draws consumers in, that draws affection from other people? So it's kind of something that I've been doing my whole life. And I loved being able to incorporate that into the wine industry. I love cattle ranching. I have horses. I do rodeo for fun, which is, is something I am really passionate about. My husband and I raised our 2 children in that environment as well. And also sports. I played basketball in college. I was a fierce competitor. I like to win, but I also really understand the value of team. And so, those were kind of, before getting into my professional, that was kind of my 2 big focuses, so to speak.
So after graduating, what was your first step?
So I graduated in 2005, and it was a really interesting time within, the economy, at least the economy where I was at. It was like all-time high. I actually entered a career for a short time that I soon quickly realized was not a great fit for me. And that's when I was like, I need to be involved with agriculture because these are my people. And similar to Oregon, Paso Robles is, this is the developed wine region, but unless you're Napa or Bordeaux, I think there's probably more room to develop, right? So we are, in our region, a lesser known community. What's beautiful about that is you need one another because the rising tide lifts all boats. And so to be in an industry that is unlike almost any other industry, I mean, how often do you see bankers getting together and talking about how they're going to elevate the banking industry? It doesn't, perhaps that happens. I've never been around that. But in agriculture, and specifically in the wine industry, we're building the reputation of the AVA. You don't want a customer to just buy your brand. You want the customer to come to their region and experience all of the brands. You want to develop that reputation as a region. And so that collaboration and camaraderie is unique. And I just knew that was something that I'm personally passionate about. And bringing, taking this fruit, which is transforming, grapes into wine is, perhaps the most expressive or luxurious way to transform agriculture. And so being able to take that and share it with people around the country has been such a gift. And I've been really blessed throughout my career to travel all over the country and the world, learning about wine, but also sharing the story of our region that we call home. Mm-hmm. But the truth is, the wine industry is beautiful, and there's something special about every place that you go. I was just fortunate enough to be able to travel to Dundee Hills and tour with Alan Holstein this morning and listening to his journey and the innovation and the renegade spirit of those people within the Oregon wine community. Not that long ago is really inspiring. And I think every region has a story that's similar to that in some way. And hey, we don't make Pinot Noir and Pinot Gris and Chardonnay where we're at. So there's something beautiful about every region that we are not in competition with one another. We need to build the category of wine.
So as this is starting to kind of come into focus for you after school and you're starting to realize that ag, wine, this is what you need to do, what were your kind of the first steps for you? What were you thinking about? How did you get yourself into a place where you could make a difference?
Mm-hmm. So it's kind of ironic. My family had joined forces with a couple of other families to purchase a vineyard that was planted by the Robert Mondavi family on our ranch. We have a 14,000 acre ranch with 2 other partners. And the Robert Mondavi family had done an enormous amount of exploration in the late 1990s and actually had secured a 1,000 acre lease on our ranch. They developed that property and had plans, to create their own brands and utilize that fruit because they felt like that land was really special. It's in the southernmost portion of the Paso Robles region in the sub-appellation of Santa Margarita Ranch. And it's one of the coolest climates, and it's got some of the most calcareous soils. And when they developed that property, it was when, in, like I said, the early 2000s, Paso Robles was not a region that was a household name. So this was a big investment. Unfortunately, in 2005, the Mondavi company, was forced to sell or chose to sell to Constellation. And at that point, there was a huge oversupply of fruit in the marketplace in '05. It was one of the biggest vintages in history. We had taken control of that vineyard in August of '05, which is right at harvest time. They had known they were going to sell, and so the inputs had been, fairly moderate to none from a farming side. And so we had a lot of fruit available that we needed to find a home for. And so we immediately, the partners had created a production facility, and we were in full steam. And at that time, you could create, it was so much cheaper to buy fruit than grow it. We were left with an oversupply. And so, for better or worse, the owners decided that we need to be in control of our destiny. This is too risky to be only growers. And we had other vineyards in the past, but this was truly something special. And so we decided to create our own brand, which proved to be, it was definitely a worthwhile venture, but it's very challenging, especially with a vineyard of that size. And so for the next 15 years, my charge was really to create national distribution footprint, national account penetration, direct-to-consumer program, oversee innovation, events, product development, working with our winemaking team. And so it was really an exciting time to be able to start something from scratch, and have a lot of confidence and support from an ownership perspective to take chances and learn. And so one of the first things I did was I hired someone who is someone that is still a friend and mentor today, who essentially provided, was like 6 months of very intense training on all things wine related, because the last thing that I would recommend for a family winery is to hire your kids who know nothing. But I was, at the time, that's the choice they made. And it proved to work out okay for all of us. But, it was really learning the ins and outs of the business. And so, we quickly developed a label, and then a couple of years later, developed and then redeveloped because, we didn't get it right. You don't always get things right on the first time. But over the last 15 years, growing that program nationally, creating relationships, traveling the country. But I'm most proud of creating a very dynamic team that ultimately was able to serve in my absence when I made the decision to move in a different direction in 2023. So it's been an incredible experience, and one that I'm forever grateful for.
You talked about the challenges, and obviously numerous challenges in that kind of a venture. What did you find to be either the biggest or the most surprising challenges, and what were some of the maybe novel to the wine industry solutions you had to come up with?
Well, I think the biggest challenge for most new producers in a underrepresented AVA without history of winemaking, I mean, there's a number of, but there's the wine category is, the number of SKUs and producers is arguably the most competitive category, of any products. I don't know of any product that has more SKUs than the wine industry. It's extremely competitive. The three-tiered system is also a difficult network to manage. Between creating relationships and managing inventory, and then going out and developing your own market share, understanding what the market wants, being able to produce products within a price point that are going to have natural momentum in the marketplace, but are still viable from a profitability standpoint. So there's a number of things that are important. I say they're challenges, but I think they're opportunities to overcome. And when you have a vineyard that's your goal is to grow to a certain case volume, it's important that your price point initially may not be the right ratio, but down the line, if you can grow market share, that things pencil out. And so there's a number of things to consider. But I think that the barriers with distribution, there's not very many distributors, and because of the way that alcohol works and every state is different, it's really important to develop those relationships that are quality, and then continuing to get out and tell your story in the marketplace in a very competitive environment that changes regularly. COVID was maybe one of the most difficult times. In some ways, it was hyper successful from a direct-to-consumer perspective. We were very innovative in creating programs that really pushed us forward. But the absence of 30% of on-premise, of 30% of our business being on-premise was a real challenge. So those are a couple of the biggest challenges, I think.
You mentioned story, obviously a huge part of the wine industry. Tell me about how, as you grew and as you got more comfortable in the role, how do you relate your story, and how do you what do you find resonates with people when you are telling your story?
Well, from my story is really one of just someone who grew up in the wine industry that has a wealth of knowledge and is able to parlay that into helping others today. And so my time at our family's company was amazing. And then in 2018, I had noticed things for a couple of years that I felt like women were underrepresented in the executive level position wise in the industry. And I've had amazing mentors that are men. I love men. It's just that if you look at overall wine consumption, it's largely female based. If you look at the most recent Silicon Valley Bank report, you will see that the wine industry for the second consecutive year has lost market share. So when you think about not only how am I going to grow my brand, or how you think about how am I going to grow the category, if we are not doing a good enough job as an industry of representing the needs of half of the population, then perhaps it's an opportunity to facilitate change. I was also very fortunate to be part of a family business. And so from the beginning, I had the ability to be in meetings and part of discussions that not everyone at my age was able to be a part of. But as I continued to evolve as a leader, I noticed that, it's largely older white men who own vineyards and are at the executive level within the distribution and ownership level. Now, that's no big deal, except for we're losing market share. Mm-hmm. So in my mind, I thought, well, if we continue to do things the way we've always done with the same voices, we can't expect different results. Mm-hmm. So instead of being accusatory or pointing fingers, I thought, what can I do to help change that? Mm-hmm. What can I help do to change that? Because the worst thing when you want to advocate for change, in my mind, is you want to bring people in to be part of the solution. Mm-hmm. And so that's where Dream Big Darling was born. And it's a tribute to my grandmother, who always called me darling. She was born in a really tough time. And she always had this passion for love and kindness. And she wasn't a rich woman. She, was a high school graduate maybe. But you could feel that love and kindness. And that was when she said darling. What I found out at her funeral was that she called everyone darling. So, but it was this term of endearment with love. And I thought, that's free. That doesn't cost a darn thing. And there was so many people that showed up at her funeral that it just made me think, like, that's what a real winner is. That's what's important. If I'm going to what's my legacy going to be? I had at that time a newborn daughter, and I thought, how am I going to make the world a better place for her? And so it was through, mentorship, education, and connecting this community of the next generation of women, not women at the executive level, because maybe they don't really need the help, but it's identifying those top performers who don't realize how important it is to have access to opportunity and others, and offer them a hand up. But then also offer them the opportunity for visibility, because with visibility comes opportunity. So we've got a number of programs that showcase individuals throughout our community with Dream Big Darling. We've got one-on-one coaching programs for professional developments. We do a leadership retreat. We're doing a number of things. It's important to keep it small and focused, because we're looking to make deep penetration within the lives of, a small group of individuals. We're not trying to just gently touch hundreds of people. We want to create a culture of giving back. And so my vision would be that we don't need this organization. My vision would be that there's great representation, that we're gaining share as an industry, and really for those people that are part of our program to use the kindness that they've been bestowed and realize that should be the fabric of leadership moving forward, and they continue.
So you're talking about, you mentioned like kind of a deeper dive into a smaller number of people. So how do you identify people that should be part of your program, and what are the most successful strategies you've used so far?
So one of the things that we do is we have an advisory group, and these are individuals, women in leadership from all aspects of the industry throughout the country, from media to distributors to master sommeliers to national accounts. So we've got people within our network who are kind of like our secret spies, so to speak. So when we have opportunities, we work on traditional methods of getting the word out, but really we actively kind of recruit and recommend that people who we feel like would be a great fit for the program apply. And then we have a pretty rigorous application process, because this is a lot of time and energy, and so we want to make sure that it's being utilized in a way that is most impactful. And so it's a questionnaire, it's a 2 to 3 minute video talking about why they should be included in the program. There's a number of things that we look at to make sure that we're really getting people who want to take it seriously.
What have been the biggest successes so far? What have you found to be maybe the most notable accomplishments so far?
The most notable accomplishments, when people get paid more money, when they redirect their career in a way that is utilizing their natural gifts, when they come back to the program. We conceived this in 2018, so it's not enormously old, but I constantly get feedback on this changed my life. I made friends throughout this community that are in my wedding, who I'm leaning on, who have helped me find jobs, who have, I've been able to help others. And so I think the biggest benefit is knowing that you truly have impacted others, and it doesn't happen overnight. And to be honest, the people we pick, they were probably going to be successful anyway, right? But we're just hoping that, we can connect them and make their trajectory so much better and stronger.
Have you, as you've now been focused on this, or five years into being kind of focused on this, have you started to see changes larger than your organization? Have you started to see the industry heading in a direction that makes you more pleased?
Absolutely. I think that there's a huge, you're seeing it in a number of respects. If you look at categories within the national retail scope, they're now dedicating, square footage, space on the shelf for different initiatives. Something that's exciting to me is this is Women's History Month, right?
Mm-hmm.
March 1st. Last month was Black History Month. So they're now the retailers are helping create space for important initiatives on their shelf because they're listening and they know that people want that. I think that, seeing the loss of market share is also prompting people to think, hey, we maybe should be doing this differently. And so we've seen a number of individuals and businesses that are interested in supporting these efforts. And I think we're moving in the right direction. Although I have to tell you, it feels like it's moving a little bit slow for my liking. But, when easy come, easy go. And so I think that, slow change that is authentic is really important. And, hey, it's going to take a while to make these changes. I mean, I remember, it could take a generation, and that's if people want to change. So it's slow moving, but I think that we're moving in the right direction. And what's going to help us move a lot faster is if we can teach this next generation to have the confidence that they need to go in and utilize their gifts, ask for what they want, because, hey, you're never going to get what you don't ask for. And so that's through confidence. And so I think we're on a really, an exciting journey as an industry. And even when things aren't perfect, it's an opportunity to improve. So I'm happy to be part of that process in a way that is proactive and not accusatory.
You talked earlier about sort of the travel aspect of being in the wine industry and of your work. I'm curious, as you have seen more of the wine industry now, how do various places compare? Obviously, California, where you're coming from, Paso Robles, where you're coming from, most familiar with, but how do other places compare? And do you feel like it is an industry moving in a direction, or do you feel like it's a number of sort of smaller industries kind of all doing their own thing?
Well, I think that it's a hard question to answer. What I love about the wine industry is that it transcends every region in the world. That every region really truly has something special, whether you're in Northern Rhone, whether you're in Cohors drinking Malbec, whether you're in Napa Valley drinking Cabernet Sauvignon, or in Oregon trying, Pinot and or Paso Robles drinking some crazy blend because they have kind of a lack of history. So I think that the consumer is very interested and engaged, and I think that I'm surprised that we're losing market share because I believe the next generation is very cause-focused and is interested in learning more about where their food comes from, the brands and people that they support with their dollars. So I think but we have to continue to evolve. I mean, we're farmers, so we're farming, and one of the things that, the reasons I started my company, Full Cup Solutions, is because I love farmers. And I knew that working for a single producer, I wasn't going to be able to help the whole industry move forward. But a lot of times, it doesn't matter if you have the most beautiful product in the world. If nobody knows about it, you're not going to sell it. So, because we're such a vertically integrated industry where you're often farming and then, bottling and designing and then selling, and, when cattle, you raise the cattle and you sell them at the auction. You're not marketing the beef. I'm not saying any industry is easier or not, but this is different. There's very important aspects of this industry that farmers probably are not aware of. If you grew up farming, sales, marketing, distribution, packaging, innovation, transportation, those are sometimes outweigh in importance of the actual product itself as far as how it relates to being successful or not successful. And I kept seeing these farmers that I loved that were so passionate about what they were doing, don't realize that when they create their bottle of wine, they think their work is somehow close to done. And in their mind, they're right. But what I've realized is the moment that the customer interacts with your product is when the journey begins. So that is revolutionary to a lot of people who come from the agricultural side. But the ability to tell story visually through different channels, through digital, making sure that your label matches your message, all of these things are very thoughtful, and those who do it well are much more successful. And so, not even just from a packaging, but also like your experience in the tasting room, being authentic, meeting the needs of the consumer, or at least just having a cohesive style for what what story you want to tell. I mean, hey, if you want to drive people around on a four-wheeler and taste in a yurt, like that's fine. But, make sure your entire message, is, and I think that'd actually be a great marketing campaign, but, make sure make sure you are not, picking somebody up in a limo and wearing a suit when you're doing it. So it's like, you just have to be really authentic and consistent in everything that you do. Which is sometimes hard. But I just love getting that authentic message to the consumer and helping companies who perhaps don't have as much experience in as many different facets of the industry have someone that they can rely on and be an advocate for. So that's why I started Full Cup Solutions, and it's all centered around, having, a heart of abundance, because that's how I love that mindset. And also we're in the wine and beverage industry, so it's keeping your glass full. It is solution based. There's not really problems, there's opportunities to improve. And so it's been wonderful to be able to work with a number of different producers and companies. That's something I get really excited about, is having variety and variation. And so being able to problem solve on a number of different issues, that because I've been, worked on a large scale project, but also helped build teams and traveled and worked with distributors, it's a different perspective that not everyone has, and I'm happy to share it to help the entire industry.
So you did a nice job of laying out a lot of the challenges that small family wineries or small family vineyards can face. As you've gotten into with Full Cup, tell me about best solutions or best practices you're finding for people who are wanting to get into the wine industry and think they have the product and think they have the solution. What are the best solutions for kind of bridging the gap between where they are and where they need to be?
Well, I think that being real clear on what you want and need is very important. Understanding what your gifts are and what makes you different and unique in the marketplace. Also having a pretty good handle on what are the needs of the consumer, and making sure that, you don't have to totally abandon what you love, but just making sure you take into consideration what's important to your consumer. I know a lot of winemakers who are really into esoteric wines, and while that's great, maybe they don't always have to go out and sell them. So making sure that you are, taking into consideration and perspective, a number of different opinions that are not naysayers, but that will speak truth to you is really important. And I think the magic and the allure of the wine industry and why we have the ability to be so successful is because of small producers. I mean, large producers are amazing. Large producers that are national brands, they're getting the product out in front of, the entire population. But the magic of the industry is with the small farmers. I mean, that's where the draw is. And that's one of the things that's so amazing about this region. 700 producers. There's a lot of small producers that are the farmers that maybe don't have a huge volume amount to sell, but they can actually go and meet the guy that's making the wine, or the woman, or the family, and talk with the person that planted that vineyard, and here's what we did well, and here's what we do wrong, and here's what I pair this wine with. I mean, that's the magic of our industry, And I think at every level, if you do something amazing, you will always have a customer.
So we'll start with Full Cup, since we're talking about it now. What are sort of the future plans for Full Cup? Are there goals you haven't undertaken yet, or do you have ambitions beyond what you've done so far?
Yeah, so the idea is to help the industry gain market share. And so, working with producers that are at all range of sizes, helping them accomplish their goals has really been what is most exciting and gratifying to me with Full Cup Solutions. And so being just that advocate or that trusted person who, you can bounce ideas off of is really important. I have some other goals as far as creating seminars and some digital plans, but those, I started just in 2023, so those are still in development. But being here and visiting with Linfield College, and over the last few days being able to talk to students and help get them excited, and perhaps showing them how their gifts can be utilized within the wine industry to make it better is a big part of what I love. And so whether that's through Dream Big Darling, whether that's through working with universities, that's how I believe I'll be, in addition to the work I'm already doing, is be able to help change the face of our industry.
Well, while we're talking about Dream Big Darling, then obviously it's been been around for a few years now, and you've seen some progress already. Same kind of question: future goals or benchmarks you're looking for on that side of things.
Yeah, I think the more of the same, more really helping individuals make a mark in the industry, and just continuing to grow. To grow our network, to grow that community.
So with both those organizations, obviously you have two very unique perspectives on the industry for yourself. What kind of advice or words of wisdom would you share with people who are entering the wine industry based on what you've learned from those positions?
Well, I think, don't be afraid to take chances. Align with companies and individuals that you deeply respect. Don't chase just money, because if you're doing something that you love, the money will come. I think it's really important to utilize your gifts. So if you're a young person, looking introspectively and thinking about what are my gifts and talents, and then seeking advice from others on how can I utilize my gifts within this industry to make an impact. That was actually part of the curriculum that we just taught at the class before we came here, because I think that sometimes when you have a gift, you don't even realize it's your gift, because it comes so easily to you. But if you can figure out how to utilize that strength to leverage your career, you'll be a lot happier, and you're going to make a lot more impact.
You brought up an interesting point earlier, talking about the loss of market share and sort of the changing consumer in wine. So, as you're looking from your perspective, what are the sort of the new consumers of wine? How have they changed, and how does the industry need to adjust itself to meet what they are looking for from wine?
Well, that's a big question. We certainly need to be more inclusive. And I think that's something that we've heard a lot about in recent years. Wine historically has been almost an elite beverage within the American community. I think in other regions in Europe, it's not quite so elite. It's more a part of everyday life. And I think that, making wine a part of everyday life and really getting people to sit down at the dinner table and share wine, share community, and share stories is a way that we can make the world a better place. But I also think that creating experiences that are unique to the typical tasting room, sit down, high-end experience is something that the next generation is very much looking for. and almost get your hands dirty or behind the scenes look is, if you're not thinking of, vineyard tours, e-bikes, letting people come in and visit the cellar during harvest when things aren't just beautifully manicured. You might be missing an opportunity to engage a generation that is very interested in actually learning, because they're wanting to align with products and people. And so I also think you have to be very authentic. This generation in particular has been sold to their entire life. They've had technology, they've had social media, they can spot a fraud really quickly. So, I think that that's actually wonderful. And it gives an edge to small producers who maybe don't have a huge budget but are extremely authentic. Well, you can show up just as you are and win a lot of customers, if you know how to engage them, in a way that moves the needle. So I think we have to do things differently is bottom line. That's why I'm here. That's why I advocate for my friends and colleagues in the industry to spend time with the next generation, to invite them, to listen to what they want, because that's how we should be shaping our goals as well.
Earlier, you brought up, obviously, the pandemic landing right in the middle of all of the work you're doing. How have you seen it affect your work and the kind of the wine industry more in general? And as we sort of move out of it now, what lessons have we learned?
Well, I don't know if we have enough time to get into I honestly think the pandemic was a blessing for our industry in some ways, not in all ways, but in some ways. I remember watching, Wine Spectator Live, and they had producers from all over the world on social media, and winemakers that I would never have an opportunity to hear speak were all of a sudden now visible, digitally. And so I think that was really, really important. And the industry is pretty far behind from a technological perspective. And so a lot of people had to get a lot better at direct-to-consumer, at e-commerce, which has historically been a small segment of the overall revenue for most producers. So I think it, is really kind of a shot in the arm as far as you better get in this or go home, because we don't have time to sit around and wait. It's a make it happen situation. So it pushed a lot of people forward. From a travel and national distribution perspective, I think people got a whole lot smarter with their time. Normally you would drive or fly to an annual meeting and for market work, and now we're having to figure out ways to do it better, smarter, faster, more efficiently, virtually being more engaging with presentations, sending samples with collateral kits. And so I think that actually made us far more innovative as an industry, although it didn't feel very good at the time. But I think from that there, some challenges like anything occurred with, working remotely and the balance, work-life balance. That we saw a huge amount of resignation in that period, and people really just took stock to evaluate, what is the most important thing in my life? And I think it was an opportunity for us to realize that we need to be in balance and make sure that it's a healthy environment for our employees from that perspective. And I think that the next generation, if we're planning on retaining and recruiting top talent, that's something that they're looking for, is making sure that they aren't just going to work themselves to death and not have time for their family. I saw some of, my parents and people in their generation do. And they're smarter in that way, which I'm grateful for, but it is an adjustment.
So I know that obviously Oregon is not your area of focus or expertise, so take this question however you want, but I'm curious about your perspective of the Oregon wine industry, having seen it from the outside, having now been in it for a little bit. What have you seen from Oregon, and what are your kind of thoughts on where it is as a wine industry right now?
Well, I think it's an incredible industry. It's focused on varietals that where I'm at in California, there's not much of. So it's really exciting to learn about the history of the region and the development and sometimes the redevelopment due to phylloxera. You know, when I was touring with Alan Holstein earlier and talking, you know, trial and error, it's similar to many other regions. You know, it's a land of innovation. They have a community spirit here, which you don't find in all regions. There is really that sense of collaboration. And I think that the wines are beautiful. I was at Lingua Franca and we were tasting wines from Burgundy alongside theirs, and I can tell you it's pretty amazing products that are coming out of this region. And what I love about it most is not only its proximity to a major airport, which is great, but there's a really nice blend and makeup of small family artisan, but then there also is, you know, some of that really high-end corporate type experience, which I think is wonderful for the consumer because you know, there's a wide range of needs or wants when touring and visiting a region, and you know, to go over and meet Jeannie Brooks and learn about the story of Brooks Winery and the culinary program that they've, you know, embodied in their garden, and you know, the plantings around their house and the tribute to her brother was pretty amazing. And the last time I was here, I did the hike between Christome and Bethel Heights, which is really amazing. And it was like, oh, we got to go through this gate and this gate to get to the other. And I was like, so you can just tell that people really love one another here. And there's so much magic of that in that because, you know, if you watch the news, it doesn't make you think that that type of community exists. So it's so refreshing to see it in other places aside from our hometown.
So what's been the most gratifying part of your work so far?
Gosh, the most gratifying part, I mean, the reason I started Full Cup Solutions and stepped away from a very successful career with our family business is because I love watching other people succeed. I want to make a difference in the agricultural community. And so being able to watch others shine is like the greatest joy. And to find their passion and utilize it, whether that's grape growing or perhaps some other, you know, some other skill or superpower, as I like to call it, you know, that's what supercharges me. So that's my greatest gift. And then also to be able to create that fabric of giving back. I think it's really important in creating opportunities for others like me and for women in the industry to know that there's a place for them here and that they will have the ability to thrive and grow.
And the last question is, what's next for you personally?
Oh gosh, well, it seems like it's been a lot of changes lately. So I think, you know, just more of the same. You know, just continuing to learn and grow and who knows, and be open to what's next and where my journey leads me. And I'm happy to have been here today, you know, to be at Linfield College. And I think what you're doing for the Oregon wine community is pretty amazing. And I'm looking forward to seeing this program grow even more because there certainly is a need with the 700 producers in the state. You know, to start cultivating talent and education within your own community is a really big deal. So I'm excited to be here today.
And we're excited to have you. Thank you so much for joining us. All the questions I have, is there anything I didn't ask that I should have? Anything you'd like to cover?
I don't think so.
Perfect. Thank you so much for joining us today. And we'll go ahead and let you off the hook.
Sweet.